Well, hello, everybody. This is John Michael, and today we celebrate St. Bernard of Clairvaux. Bernard was really the man who revived the Cistercians. The Cistercians had started out earlier under Stephen and a few of his companions. They wanted to reform the Benedictine way of life from Cluny, and there was another community at Malem that did the same thing. They tried that. It wasn't quite enough. So they started their own, but it was a rugged life and nobody came to join them. Not a soul. So after a good number of years, they were getting a little discouraged. And here comes St. Bernard of Clairvaux. And he comes with 4 or 5 of his brothers and about 24 friends, and they join. And so all of a sudden, Cîteaux, for the Cistercians, becomes a handful of people living there to a bustling monastery. And one of the big things they did in monasteries back in those days was to get a library. Now, the libraries were quite small, probably not as big as what, for instance, the serious reader in their own home would have. But they did get libraries, and that attracted recruits. So they started this reform, and they were called the White Monks, along with the Camaldulies and the Carthusians, who wore undyed wool, so their habits were white. So they started this white monk movement as contrasted to the black monks who dyed their habits black, and they were part of Cluny, and that was a massive renewal about 150 years earlier. So here comes this other renewal and reform, and Bernard revives it. They start a daughter house in Clairvaux, where Bernard becomes the abbot. And by the end of Bernard's life, they have 300 and some odd monasteries, I think 60 of which were founded from Clairvaux. Bernard was an amazing man of prayer, an amazing thinker and writer. He was an amazing preacher. So he quickly became, some people would say, the most popular man in the church in the West during his lifetime. He preached the humanity of Jesus and devotions to the humanity of Jesus, his heart, his caring heart, his love, his death on a cross. And he wrote extensively, the most famous of which would be on the Song of Songs. But he also wrote commentaries on the Benedictine rule. His 12 steps of humility and pride go right along with the Benedictine rule. And so he writes this steps of humility and pride, and they're wonderful to read. So he's a great author. He was also very sick. In his choir stall, they kept a bucket of sorts so that he could vomit. So he would be up there as the abbot and leading and, being the overseer of the monastery. And during choir, he would often get nauseated and vomit. So he had a very tender stomach and not great health. So this was Bernard. This was Bernard, a reformer of the church, a reformer of the Benedictine monastic expression, a man that went on despite his health. He could have just laid down and said, "I'm sick." He didn't. He kept going. A man of great zeal, a fervent man of prayer, a fervent man of meditation, and then of writing and of preaching. And he helped renew the church in his time. So he stands as a great example for all of us. I pray that you be encouraged by St. Bernard to be a great man or woman of God yourself in our time, and to not let things like sickness get in your way. Jesus is the healer. And sometimes you just go through those things, and because of your fire and your zeal, you get through them and you continue to preach the gospel. And even though he was throwing up in choir regularly, I can't even imagine that. So he's a great example. And be a man or a woman of prayer, and a man or a woman who's able to look at things like the Benedictine rule or the teachings of the church and really go to the heart of them. So that's my prayer for you. I love you guys. St. Bernard of Clairvaux, pray for us. And remember, all things are possible with God.